We all have those items in our wardrobes. You know, the ones that you saw someone talking about, shouting to the rooftops about how incredible it was, so you had to go out and buy it for yourself. Now, I will say that some of these things end up being absolute gems. There is a reason why everyone is talking about them, but some things maybe not so much and end up feeling a little bit overrated. So today is part 3 of Influencers Made Me Buy It, or the things that I was influenced to buy. And I hope that by sharing these reviews, it's really helpful for those of you who have maybe been considering adding these things to your wardrobe as well. I will have everything linked down in the description box below, but if there's anything that I miss, please feel free to ask any questions in the comments, and I'd also love to know if you've been influenced to buy any of these particular items. I want to get straight to it with the one that I think most of you will be really curious about. It's the COS oversized cashmere sweater. And this was one that I was told to buy instead of the Rose Ophelia knit, which you'll know I do have that. I have both, and I think sometimes the best judge of whether something was better or not is actually just the passage of time, being able to wear something and see how it wears, if it kind of holds up to your particular lifestyle. So I actually ended up trying all 3 colors of this oversized cashmere sweater, and it's funny because when I was in the changing room trying on the grey one, I remember having this moment where I thought, oh, is this the sweater I want instead of the Row one? In the end, the Ophelia sweater was more in line with what I was seeking out, but I still really loved the cashmere knit and decided that I couldn't leave the store without buying at least one of them. When people tell you the sweater is good, they're not lying. It is a really nice cashmere sweater. It's quite plush. It's a very thick ply compared to some of my other knits, so that makes it feel incredibly luxurious and just very comfortable to wear. I also love the fit as well, being something very slouchy and easygoing, particularly if you have a more casual style. For styling, I tend to prefer how it looks worn loose, though because it is quite a drapey knit, it means that you do have the option of doing a little bit of a half tuck or maybe even using a band around the waist in order to secure it so that you can crop the shape if you want. These cost a pretty penny, 450 Australian dollars, so not cheap by any means, and at that kind of price point, I'm expecting a couple of things. 1, the design has to be really nice, which for me is tick that box. 2, the cashmere has to feel really soft and plush, and also I'm expecting it to be kind of thick. And 3, I'm expecting that I'll be able to wear it at least 4 to 5 times before I even need to consider doing any sort of wardrobe maintenance. Unfortunately, it fails on that last point. This sweater starts to pill the moment you begin wearing it, and I found even halfway through the day there was a considerable amount of pilling on the front of the knit. I have run a cashmere comb over it, though I did kind of a light job rather than an incredibly thorough job, so you'll be able to see how it still looks kind of bobbly and fuzzy. So I need to kind of work on that a little bit more. But I will say that at that price, I was quite disappointed because I did expect a little bit more. Now here's the thing about pilling. It's not an indicator of bad quality. However, over time, it can reveal that some items are poorer quality compared to others, but it's a very natural part of wearing a cashmere or even some wool knits. Why this happens is as a result of friction. So if you're holding young children, your bag is rubbing against your sweater, or maybe your coat is rubbing against your sweater, those are all going to result in pilling. And as you maintain and look after your knit, you'll find that the amount of pilling actually decreases over time as those shorter fibers have come loose. So it is something that will continue to be a lifelong maintenance job for any kind of natural fiber knitwear, but it's not a reflection on the item itself unless you've just happened to use really short fibers. So that in of itself doesn't make me upset, but more so just how quickly. Otherwise, I think it's a really beautiful sweater, definitely comparable in terms of the style to the Row Ophelia, though not exact. And you can read my Substack on the topic if that's something of interest. But if you are looking for something low maintenance and gives off a similar vibe, I would recommend the Roy sweater from Dish. I'll pop a photo on screen and link it down below. It's a cotton and merino blend, so it doesn't feel quite as luxurious, but still very nice. Let's talk about a bag next, because when I mentioned that I was considering this bag, I did actually receive a few questions about it. It is the Romy bucket bag from Cezanne. Now, I ended up buying this as part of their summer archive sale, which means that it's final sale, not returnable. And the only person that I could find reviewing this bag or even mentioning it was Anna Newton, and she didn't really reflect too much on the bag, more so on the print itself. I've been coveting it for so long that in the end I decided to just go ahead with it, as I've had a really good experience with Cezanne bags. Also, the quality of it is really beautiful, and it has a very structured shape to it, which you can see. There is no magnetic fastening, though the straps themselves, they help to secure the bag shut. So when it's on the shoulder, no one's getting their hands in there. I would say though, overall, it's probably not my most functional bag. I like the size, I can fit kids' water bottles in here, but the main issue for me is one, the opening, the mouth of the bag is actually not that large, so you can't fit really oversized objects in here despite it being a comparatively big bag. And the other thing is that when you're trying to open it and it's on your shoulder, it's incredibly tricky because the way that the straps have kind of been crafted, it sort of stops you from opening it the full way. So you couldn't hold a child and get into this bag with ease. And that's probably the one thing that I would say stops us from being a kind of 10 out of 10 purchase for me. I think overall it's really nice, it adds in some great texture. I really like the color as well. And I think the other thing with structured bags, which I need to remind myself of often, is that young children generally aren't that mindful of where they're putting their feet, and mine have a really bad habit of trying to step on my bags when they're in the car. So that's kind of the other thing, is that if you don't store this properly, it's going to lose its shape, which I think is part of the charm of the bag. But I mean, Cezanne bags in general, they are really lovely. They are well made. I've got no issues with the quality of the stitching, the glazing, everything on it looks immaculate otherwise. So I hope that helps anyone who has been considering that bag or the tote style. Let's do a shoe next, the AD Uma Flats. And I really wanted to talk about these especially as someone did say to me, oh, aren't you sad that your shoes don't look that nice after wearing them? And I will say this, I say this often, if you aren't going to love an item when it is worn in, don't buy it, because you're going to end up being disappointed. Things only look pristine the first couple of times that you wear them. Mine have softened up, there's creases all across the toe. I actually did have a little bit of wear to the finish, so the cracked patent finish did kind of wear off ever so slightly, but I took them to the cobbler so that I could get some taupey soles put on the bottom just to help protect and prolong the life of these shoes. And he made a point of polishing them, so now you would never know. They look pretty good aside from the fact that they've got the creasing. I really love AD shoes as a whole. I think that they are some of the kind of best made, most comfortable shoes that I have purchased and added to my wardrobe. With the exception of the Betty shoe, which I just don't love the way it's creased at the toe, I've been so happy with every single shoe from AD. Now, these I did get in my usual size 40, and I think if I had my time over, maybe I would buy them in a 40.5, as I do have wide feet, and I've noticed wearing a lot of shoes without any kind of insole support, I think that that's contributing to the general flattening and widening of my feet. So some of my shoes, which are my usual EU40, don't quite fit the same as they used to, or at least don't fit the same as they did 5 years ago. So just something to bear in mind. But they're very comfortable, even for those with wide feet. They've never given me a single blister. I have absolutely no complaints, and I can walk reasonably large distances. Also, the strap across the foot is adjustable. These definitely a win. One of those things I'm really glad I added to my wardrobe. I always get at least 1 or 2 questions every time I wear this jacket, and coincidentally it was one that I personally was influenced to buy. I'd seen it on a few people and it sort of filled that gap in my wardrobe for more of a slouchy, relaxed trench that fell just below the hip. And I will say aesthetically, it really hits the mark for me. It feels really easy, very effortless. I love the little details, how it's cinched in at the sleeve, which if you push it up your arm, you get some great balance with your outfit, which is something I'm often talking about when you're wearing more oversized pieces. I also really appreciate the fact that there is a belt that can be worn both at the hip and at the waist, so you can really cinch it in and create a little bit more shape. Though I will admit I've not worn it at the waist once. I kind of like the way it looks loose. All of the details, all the finishings on it feel incredibly elevated, from the embossed buttons to the way that the collar has been structured so it really holds its shape and sits nicely. I mean, I will say that that is something Camilla and Mark do well, and I appreciate and understand all of these things add to the cost. Now, I will say I had this assumption when I was buying this that it was a cotton twill, and I made the big mistake of not actually checking the composition tag, and I was really disappointed when I learned that it's 100% polyester. It's an incredibly high-grade polyester. I can tell from the finish because it doesn't feel synthetic at all, at least not to my hand, and I'm incredibly fussy when it comes to fabrics, as many of you will know. But realizing that they've decided to opt for a man-made fiber over a cotton, which I think would have looked just as nice and hung just as beautifully on the body, It kind of baffles me, and I've noticed this a lot with Camilla and Mark pieces recently, that they are using a lot more synthetics and recycled polyesters where I don't necessarily feel that they need to. And I think it's really hard to understand the justification as a consumer when you're looking at those prices and thinking, well, why wouldn't you use natural fibers? To me, that makes sense, especially at the price that I'm paying. So that's probably the only downside for me. Outside of that, I'm actually incredibly happy with this jacket. I wear it a lot. It's a really good lightweight option. Perfect if you live in a milder climate like I do, but also a really good transitional weight piece. It runs incredibly oversized. I have the small medium, and I think the extra small would have also been okay, but this is the one I tried on in store and I quite liked the way that it hung and draped, so ended up going for it. But yeah, that's probably the only downside to this that I would kind of highlight and flag if you have been eyeing up this item. I think they do it in a couple of other colors or prints as well. Tibi Nylon Winslow pants. Again, another really expensive purchase, and that's why I think feedback on these sorts of items can be really helpful, especially if you were saving up for something like this. I had been eyeing these up for a while, and I was kind of kicking myself for not getting the acid wash version in the sweat pant sort of fabrication. And when I saw the navy ones, I kept seeing them on everyone, I instantly thought those are the ones I need to add to my wardrobe. As someone who has a few of the crispy nylon pieces already, it kind of felt like a no-brainer. Very easy to care for. It's a fabric I can throw in the washing machine. Grease mites come out with a bit of Dawn Fairy soap, and I think when you're spending that amount of money on something, it really does need to work for your lifestyle, and that's often where I've gone wrong when I'm spending a little bit more money. So from that standpoint, it has checked every single box for me. I find them really easy to wear, and a detail that I love about them is actually that you can still get that puddle at the foot, but they have these snaps at the back of the pant which allow you to adjust the hemline so that you're not snagging or tripping on the hem of the pants, you're not getting them dirty and grubby. I think the fit of them is really fun too. A barrel leg design, a great way to kind of add some range and some variation into your wardrobe, particularly if you lean on more classic silhouettes. And in terms of sizing, I went with an extra small regular. I personally find, as someone who likes to wear things high-rise, that Tibi clothing runs incredibly generous. I'm often a 0 or a 00 in their trousers, just so I can achieve that high-waisted look. I have actually done a review of these on my website with all the measurements too, so I'm going to link that down below. But overall, yes, I've been really happy with them. Do they make noise? They do. They make noise when you walk, but I think that you kind of tune it out. You're not focusing on it unless you're focusing on it. At least that's how it's been for me. Love that they've got an elasticated waistband. It makes them very, very comfortable, and they just kind of inject that sort of element of style. It's kind of intentional sculptural component. But yes, they are really good. If you love Tibi, you love their crispy nylon, and you love a barrel leg, I don't think you'll be disappointed. On to an item which didn't work out for me that I no longer have in my wardrobe, and that is the Cezanne Betty cardigan. And I know what you're thinking. Haven't you recommended this one to us before? The answer is yes, because it is actually a really beautiful cardigan, but the reason why it didn't work for me is the shape. I found that it was a little bit too cropped for me. I prefer a longer jacket or something that's a little bit shorter, so whenever I wore it, I felt like it just highlighted my hips and really accentuated the widest part of my body. This is such a personal thing, but it was that singular detail that stopped me from ever wearing it, and I also think I did myself a disservice opting for a striped version rather than a plain block color, because it was quite a dramatic, intense piece to wear despite it being a black and white stripe because of that high contrast component. I think when we wear high contrast, we need to be in the mood for it. You have to want to wear that in that moment, and that styling that's often on the periphery for me. So all of those things combined made it a bad purchase for my wardrobe, but I know so many people love it. The quality of it is exceptional. It's a really nice merino wool that is not scratchy, but it also has a little bit of structure to it too, which I think is what gives it that really ladylike, kind of elegant feel. So if you love it, don't let my personal experience dishearten you. Consider the variable points that I've mentioned that made it wrong for my wardrobe. The length of it, so how it's going to play in with your personal proportions. Also the fit as well, it's quite boxy if you do size up, which I did, so probably stick with your true size. The color, so are you going for something that is a little bit bolder and loud, something that feels really harmonious with your wardrobe? And the other thing I would consider is it too ladylike for you? Because it does feel quite elegant and really refined. A nice way to dial up a more casual outfit. But yeah, That's my thoughts on the Betty. Then I want to move on to a couple of pairs of shoes which are very, very similar. First up, some leather flip-flops from Madewell, which I really had to go out of my way to buy because they wouldn't ship them to Australia, so I had to use mail forwarding. You could tell I was really desperate to buy these, even though I probably could have found something similar locally. But I don't know, these just had a chokehold on me after I saw them, and I can't remember who it was that I spied wearing them, but an absolutely phenomenal recommendation and addition to my wardrobe. I've been delighted with them, so much so they were one of my most worn shoes of the summer. And I think that this actually just goes to highlight how lovely the shoes from Madewell are. I've been really impressed across the board with the quality of every single shoe that I've bought from Madewell. I don't know if they have these ones anymore, but they do a heeled version, which I got in the red suede, which I think are really fun, and I'm excited to wear them once spring hits. A couple of other alternatives would be Tiki's for something a little bit more slimline, or alternatively A. Emery do a really beautiful option, and I find that as a brand, they're quite suited to wider feet. Another pair of very similar looking sandals. Let's just get these done in one hit. These are from Ancient Greek. They're a pair of jelly sandals with the contrasting red straps. They bear a striking resemblance to a similar style from The Road. These I think are really fun, especially if you dress more minimally. However, they are dreadfully uncomfortable. I find every time I wear them, they pinch my feet because of the jelly straps, and it makes me not want to wear them. So quite disappointing really, as Ancient Greek sandals are beautiful quality and generally one that I would think of as being kind of a comfortable option that you could wear all summer. I should have known better, and I have said I'm not going to buy jelly shoes, and then I went and bought these. So I think the joke's on me. That was my mistake. They do run small, so I got them in the 41, so my heel wouldn't hang off the end. But yeah, one to miss if you don't want your feet to be upset with you later. We've got another jacket, another quite expensive one at that, but I feel like this is what you're here for, right? This is the Angelo jacket from Harris Tapper in kind of the mole brown color. It also comes in a black. I will say Harris Tapper is definitely up there as one of my favorite brands to shop. I just think the quality often really beautiful, though I know that there are certain fabrications I'll steer clear of. This one is 100% wool, so it is double-faced and it has a really nice hand feel to it. It has a really oversized silhouette, the sort of cocooned sculpted sleeves being the key detail that adds a lot of drama, and then the contrast buttons down the front. I got this in a medium, which I had tried on in store, and I really liked the length being a bit longer. I was told the small was shorter, and that's actually what stopped me from going with a smaller size, as the length was the key detail I was concerned with. At this price point, I would have loved if this jacket had been made in New Zealand. As an example, I have a cashmere and wool coat from Juniper Theory, which is made locally in Australia. It actually has a lot more design details, though I'm sure they're using a different fabric. I mean, they're going to have different costs that go into the making process, but it's under $500. So to me, when I'm comparing those two things, I'm feeling like the value proposition of this jacket is nowhere near as high as that other coat, or even coats from the Curated, which I think deliver similar value, but they are a lower price point too. So would I buy this again? I'm a little bit on the fence because there are a lot of consideration points that go into a purchase, and just kind of having that contrast, that comparison, makes me rethink this jacket, despite the fact that I love it and I love the way that it looks, and I'm going to have this in my wardrobe and wear it as much as possible. But I think that those are things to consider, especially if you've had your eye on this. So yes, it's lovely, but you might be able to find something more affordable elsewhere. Assembly Label is actually another great brand that does natural fiber jackets, but they're under the $400 mark, so also a really worthy option to check out. The final thing that I wanted to talk about in this video that I have been influenced to buy are the ribcage jeans from Levi's. And I know a lot of you have gone on to buy these based off my recommendation, and to me, these are just incredible value for money if we're talking about kind of what you're getting for what you're paying. I often find that they're also on sale too, so typically you can save 30 to 40%, especially if you're buying them locally here in Australia, but I have seen them marked down on international retailers as well. To me, these are just kind of the perfect sort of straight leg jean that isn't too wide through the leg. I like that there are different inseams, so They are a little bit harder to get your hands on. The 29-inch inseam is perfect for my height, and as someone with a longer torso, I really love the high rise. I do kind of wish that these had a zip fly as opposed to a button fly, as that does sit flatter against the body, but it's not a deal breaker for me. And it's kind of not surprising that these are good. Levi's is a brand that I feel you can trust when it comes to good quality denim, particularly as they're sort of an iconic brand for really comfortable lived-in jeans. These sort of have that look, this particular wash, which I think is Oh Hi Shore. It reminds me a lot of that vintage Levi 501 fit that everyone wants to get. If you do want them to be a little bit slouchier, I would size up, otherwise stick with your usual size. They'll be quite snatched. They give a little bit with wear, but being 100% cotton, they aren't going to have that kind of comfort stretch that you would get from a denim that has a little bit of elastane in them. Which, if that's what you're after, I would probably look to a brand like Everlane. Which, side note, if you do find that the rise on these is too high, check out the wedgie jean because it's a very similar shape but just more of a mid-rise. So perfect for those who are more petite, because even that mid-rise might be a high-rise on you, or those who have shorter torsos. I have no notes, these are a 10 out of 10 and a pair of jeans that I will continue to recommend until the end of time. So that was another 10 items that I personally have been influenced to buy, and I'm curious to know if you've added any of these things to your wardrobe too, and if you would agree with my kind of sentiment and thoughts. I hope that you found this interesting. As I mentioned before, I want to know what you've been influenced to buy. What were the hits? What were the misses? I generally find that when someone is recommending something, it tends to be good. If it's something that they're wearing a lot, you see them in it all the time, usually I know it's going to be a winner, as long as it meets my personal preferences and the specifications for what I like to add into my wardrobe. It's when those things don't align that it tends to be a bit of a fail for me, like the Betty sweater that I mentioned earlier, or even the ancient Greek sandals, which I should have known better buying a pair of jelly shoes. But thank you so much for watching, for spending some of your day with me. I'm really grateful. I hope that you have the most beautiful week ahead. If you did enjoy this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe if you're new here. I share a lot of brand reviews, how to make the most of your wardrobe, and styling tips. Have an incredible week ahead, and I'll see you next time with a new one. See you soon. Bye.